Hey everybody, BTO Pro here. I'm in class and you're listening to me record, but you're watching this later, which makes me question if I talk too fast, because I do. So I've NPM installed. After that, I'm going to open this in VS Code. This is a shortcut that my computer has, where I just type code space period. Hide that little label. I don't need that on screen the whole time. All right, and then I'm going to do NPM start. All right, so the main reason I picked this one, it has HAX Camp on it. And so this is a great advertisement for an event that happened over a year ago. But we've got the toggle for description. We can duplicate, toggle, change title, delete, all but the last one. These are all the things that were in the initial evaluation. Sick. Now, when I look at this repository, really, there's only two files you're ever working with. One is going to be index.html, and one is going to be my-card, in this case, under the src directory. So largely, I'll have both of those open. A lot of times when I'm working locally, which I did in the other video, is I'll do like this. Right, so I got split screen. That way, as I hit save, you should see flash and refresh. Okay. So we see here there's properties that are baked in by default on this. We've got some styling, body tag, which shouldn't be in here, a lot of styling. Right? You basically copy and pasted this from your other element, right, Owen? Okay. And then you rescoped all of these selectors. So I'm not going to knock the, like this does work. So that's cool, right? So a lot of times I'll do this. I'll copy the name of a method and then I'll hit Control F so that I can do a find and go, okay, got some event listeners there, right? So the buttons are at the bottom of your card and we've got duplicate, toggle, change title, delete last. Now, the other video that I made right before class gets into a repo, because your repo was fantastic as far as having these outside, but we don't want these in our element. We want the element's code to only be the element in question. The other thing we're trying to focus on is how can we expand this so other people could use the card. Now, obviously, for the purposes of something called my card, no one's going to use my card, right? But some of you have things like player profile, sports card, Sheets. I don't know why there's a Sheets ordering system card, but there's a Sheets and probably a Wawa out there. Okay. So there are other cards, right? And that card, if it was in, let's say, a Sheets ordering interface, right, it'd be next to each other, and they're not going to be Sheets-card and then magically know that this is a sandwich and that's a hot dog with the label and the price, right? So the way that we can enhance these designs so they go from just being static items into stateful ones we can actually reuse over and over again is through properties and slots. So a property would be like up at the top where it says properties header. So I'm going to ignore the styling for a minute. Properties and making this thing stateful so we can modify it is probably the easier of these two things conceptually, right? So what on this card, this will be an open question for whoever to answer, but what on this card is variable in your mind? The image? Okay. And so I should make a property named what? Card image? Well, I'm already in a card. Does it need to be card image? Just image, right? It could be source, it could be src, it could be image, whatever ends up making sense to what you have in that case. So what I'm going to do, and this is the way I actually operate. Some of the videos coming up do show this sort of a thing. Literally lift a style and then think, what is the name of the variable I'm going to put in its place? And so in this case, you can write variables into these templates like this. You've got $, and then curly brace, this dot, name of the property, and then close it. Now, this has alt data as far as an image, so we'll update that next. But now, under properties, we're not using header here, so I'm going to put image. Then the fun thing with my autocomplete thing is It's always syntactically correct. So I've got type string. An image is going to be a string. Now, based on just some of the ones I saw below, I'm also going to have alt because there's an alternate way of presenting that image. I'm probably going to have title. I'm probably going to have description. I'm probably going to have a link of some kind. You see the beauty of AI. Once you're in a certain mental model, it's as if it's listening to me right now. Might be. Now, for each property that we define, we're going to set a default. And sure enough, it's starting to figure out the things we're going to pull as properties out of this. So this is actually the way I go about building any of my own assets, of which at this time, as of yesterday in the presentation I gave, we have 831. We have not made a single little adorable card. We have mountains and mountains of these in an ecosystem. And every single one must be manicured and massaged in this way. This process, design the thing, put the card. Oh, that could be this attribute. How do we reverse engineer this so that I never have to think about this concept again? Is what we're going with as far as design work. So image, alt, title, description, link. A lot of times, honestly, just for my own laziness, I'll copy these things and I'll just like throw them visually somewhere that I can reference real quick so I don't mess up the names. So this is going to be the title. This.title. This is going to be our alt info. This.alt. This is going to be description. And this also is a good, I'd say good reason as to why these names being really simple and intentional and meaningful to you benefits you when the robots come. Because it knew that I would probably want to variabilize the text-based input because this is named class description. If it was class, the thing that I have that I just have to do anyway, or something absurdly long, it might not know that. And even if it did, it might give me some stupid variable name to go with it. So, all right, that we're going to leave as details, but we did want to replace the link. Link. And this would be where I go, I'm not entirely sure that I love the way that it named that, but that's fine. All right, so we've got description, title, alt, image, link are all used now. Now, I'm not going to remove these for the purposes of what we're looking at today, but really your card should probably end up being more like that, to be perfectly honest. It shouldn't have any of the scoping in it. It shouldn't have a main tag in it because that doesn't make a ton of sense in this context. So let's save. Ooh, we've got that image over there, and it changes every time. And thank goodness image sum or whatever the hell that is doesn't generate terrible images at random. So, okay. The next thing that I tend to do is right-click and point out something hilarious. The tool that is currently recording this that you are seeing and potentially watching this later is called Screencastify. Screencastify uses web components to inject itself into any web page. This is a practical business application of the technology running right here as I'm recording. They don't have to think about any other aspect of the application that it's in to know that it will be globally, it won't be affected by global scoping, and it'll work anywhere. Now, for their purposes, this NG is probably related to Angular, so they probably have some mix of Angular gobbledygook, but also putting it inside of a web component so it works anywhere. It's just a fun aside. So now on my card, I should be able to do image equals, and if I pasted that in there, no, I didn't. Image equals, right? And it updates it. What is immediately apparent there? Anyone see a problem with that design and what I just did? I'll put them side by side because this will be the next step. So I've got one card on the page. I'm going to go to index, which is my demo. And we'll throw down a whole bunch of them. We did this last week to illustrate, okay, for scoping, a card needs to just be a card, right? It can't have all the buttons in it. However, if written correctly, as this is, right, we also get functional scoping. So I can duplicate this card everywhere, and all of that functionality lives just with that instance, which is pretty cool. That's kind of how the Screencastify engine ends up working. But let's just make 2 my cards. The first one is going to be title equals stuff, and it's going to be image equals, goodness, I'm having trouble typing. It's going to be that. So if we get our properties right, this allows us to pass data through and remix this card to be whatever we want. Now it's a generalized asset, and now we can reuse it on different websites. It's no longer just some football player on a team that's not very good. We'll call them the Cleveland Browns. Maybe it's a good football team. I can't name one because I don't like football. So we've got image, title, stuff. So you need to go through, variabilize, and wire that stuff up into your card. So it's a reusable asset. Naming conventions are really important. Now, another aspect, and this is shown in the video as well, is we've got toggle color. There's a way to do toggle color, and this way isn't terrible, the way that you've wired it up. So if I look at the code for toggle color, it says, grab the card, okay, look at the container, data card 1, and it actually just toggles a class. So this is somewhat stateful. I can go to BG toggle, right? I can see that that makes the background color dark gray. And so when we're clicking that button in his application, we get toggle color, and all it's doing, if I inspect, description, right? You see it on this container, it'll flash. That's a nice aspect of having this window open, right? So all toggle color is doing is it's changing that CSS class, and that's not awful. However, if you were to use my card and you wanted it to have this background color to start, it's not possible because we're going to take the buttons out of there. So we need some easily accessible way to manipulate and have variations of the card. And the reason that it's important to focus on this is we will be moving into project work soon. And just as a basic example, one of those projects is called Polaris CTA. Polaris was the code name of the Penn State website. It no longer is, but it was at one point in time. And so on the Penn State brand, when you go to it and you go, wow, this looks like a legitimate university that I want to attend, you click on a button. That button and the common vernacular is CTA. CTA is short for call to action. It's trying to get the user's attention to say, we want to do something. You can see this then implemented on the homepage, right? Join our network, right? That's the action item. I want to click and do whatever the action is. Down on the page, they don't have that, but the action is more Penn State news. So it's not that it's just a link or just a button. It's trying to discover news. There's some action the user is going to take as part of whatever that asset is. So when we go to do those later, right, there's going to be these variants of this. So we want to be able to supply some variation title-wise, or sorry, property-wise, that invokes this stylistic change. So the way that we can do that in the example in question is with this BG toggle. So I'm going to make a property, and we're going to call it dark. We'll call it dark. Dark is going to be a Boolean. So it's not going to be interpreted as a string. Boolean is then going to only be values of true and false. So let's trace and see how that ends up in the page. I'm also going to add this, and some of you did in assignments I reviewed, and that was actually a property that was part of the one that I go over before class. Reflect. When you say reflect, this means any change inside your element that modifies this dot dark, when it's rendered out for someone, it'll actually say my hyphen card dark. So you can change logic internal to this, but it actually shows up on the website. So whose card did I say I made? Whose card did I go over? Wasn't Owen's. Who made clothing? You made clothing card, right? No? Darn it. All right, never mind. I was going to ask a question. But the reason that we want to reflect this and we want this to show up in the web page is it actually becomes something we can use for styling. So instead of just having this class that's buried inside of our element here called BG toggle, I'm going to name this differently. It's going to be :host dark. And we're going to take that and paste it there. Okay. And so instead of a CSS class that only lives inside of our element that was toggled to click on to make it go back and forth, now it's an attribute that you can set on the tag, because :host means the tag itself. And so by stringing together a whole bunch of these little tiny booleans, you can have all kind of design characteristics change about the element downstream. So I've got that as dark, and it's going to affect the container. Let me just verify that code was written nicely by the robots. It was. Okay, so it's on container. I'm going to save. And now I should be able to have my card, and I should have dark, and I should have my card without that value. Let's find it. There we go. So by doing that, now I could still toggle the color and it's not going to do anything. So you do there is refactoring that would be involved there, because that is a API change. But this is now, by my definition I'm using in class, stateful. And the reason it's stateful is I could go to card and I can type the word dark. And so if I can go into the DOM and just modify that attribute and have it reflect the visual change that I want, that means other applications could do that. That means other developers using this card could look at a style guide and say, oh, we want these variations, and copy and paste an example. That makes it stateful by my definition. So the last aspect of this would be around toggle. So toggle has HAX Camp 2022. And if we look in the card, HAX Camp 2022 is the default value of description. And description is somewhere in here. Where are you? There we go. Description's right there. So we've got this awesome event called HAX Camp that we want to market. And so I'm going to write description equals welcome to HAX Camp. And I'll hit save. And so then when I look at the card, it says welcome to HAX Camp. And then, but shoot, you need to actually attend HAX Camp. So I don't want welcome to HAX Camp. I want a href equals, right? Because you're going to actually, I do own the domain and I paid way too much money for it. HAX Camp. Okay, and then it's, do you see the problem? Hopefully. So I have a design asset. The design asset has this area right here. It has a toggle button. And I'm printing a variable right here. And that variable is great when it's a word, or if it's a Boolean even, or a number. But what if that is other HTML? Because we're writing HTML all over the rest of the document. You're going to want to put HTML in HTML. It's kind of the whole reason for the specification. I can't put HTML in this field. I mean, I could actually character encode this stuff correctly. Let's put the hyphen there. And then there we go. And then it's not closing that one. And then we copy. All right. So I do, okay, I lied. I put HTML in description. And so what I get is the textual representation of HTML, because it's type string. It's not type magic made up HTML blob that you just pasted in there. So there is a way around this in the specification. It's covered in the lit docs as well. And it's called slot. And what slot does is allow us to do this. So I'm going to get rid of description for that card. Paste that in there. The HTML specification by design allows us to put things in things. That's how it works. It's all nesting everywhere. And so if we have a div and you put another div in it and you put a paragraph in it, none of you thought twice about it. These tags we're making, we can do the same thing. And by doing so, you can stack things together to build full applications rather quickly. So by default, when I put that in there and I have a link, welcome to HAX Camp, it's not going to do anything. One, I have a default value for description. So description is just going to render there. But there's a unique tag in a web component called slot. And by writing slot like this, slot says anything that you've put inside of me, the tag, present it here visually. So anything that I put inside of this, even if it's 100 of these stupid links, they're going to render there, and it's going to stack the way normal HTML would stack. So I can put anything in there. If I really wanted to, you could go into card inception. Card inception happens in the other video for class. So I could put a dark card. I could put a, where did you go? There you go. I could take that dark card and I could paste that into my card, which I paste into my card, and my card is in my card. And so now I've got card in card in card in card in card. And while that doesn't make a lot of sense and is kind of a silly example, it's also not, because you've actually used websites or potentially been to websites that do this. So what I just did as far as pasting an item into itself is a form of recursion. Does anyone know what recursion is? So we're getting way more CSE topic land here with recursion, but it's a function that keeps calling itself until it churns through and processes information typically. But on the web, we can use recursion to visualize complex nested data by breaking it into its fundamental pieces. So in this case, we have map menu item. Map menu item is allowed to have map menu items inside of it. It uses a tag called map menu builder. The builder builds items. The items could have other builders in them, which could also build items. And by having a consistent design language for something like this, you can have the tag itself build this really complex hierarchy, but yet manage all the visuals in one place because it's still ultimately one tag. So that is the two big to-dos for this week is around making your cards variable in, well, actually 3 big to-dos. Making your cards have properties, be stateful, making your buttons be outside of the card so that it's controlling things from the outside. I show that aspect in the other video. I'm not going to waste time in class doing that now because I already recorded it there. And then the third one is adding slot support in. For almost every design I've seen, that makes sense under the toggle description area, but it could make more sense under a different aspect of your card. So back to outline. So I did put video up. I'll actually hit stop now because I did record it